this party started. Hey, everybody. Welcome to week 272. I do keep track, but Rain Man Adam Boatsman does not. He just takes the easy way out and says it's a bazillion and something. Adam is coming in hot from Greenville, South Carolina. He's down there. And this is not Adam. This is Jack Barsky.
Oh, really?
Yes, another Jack. We just can't get enough Jacks on this webinar. So Jack Santinello, good to see you as well. It's nice seeing actually a split screen. So, you know, if you want to pick your nose, do so at your own peril because we're all watching. So anyway, we have Jack Barsky. If you have not read this book, I highly encourage you to do it. I first listened to this book on Audible, and then I bought this book, and he is going to sign this book for me now that he's in town and leaving tomorrow. But I met Jack Barsky 4 years ago because we were waiting for a guy's private jet to take us to Cabo. And a good friend of mine, who is also a good friend of his, that was on that same flight, said, he pointed to Jack Barsky and he goes, "Oh boy, does he have a story?" Yes, he does. He was an undercover lone wolf KGB spy in the United States. And we'll talk a little bit about that. We'll take any of your questions that you have. But really what we want to do is I want to talk about some of the similarities between what you had to do as a spy and what you as an entrepreneur and what other entrepreneurs have to do, Jack. And you've got some stories that you could tell us that would kind of weave that narrative together. And I think even some of your story would be fun too. Let me see how people are coming on here. So we got a dozen participants, so that's cool. They usually start rolling in because they need coffee like you. We had to get Jack up at 4 a.m. his time because he came in here from Austin, Texas. He was with us yesterday for the Anything But Typical CEO Convergence at the Whitewater Center. He did a great job. And we thought, well, while he's in town, he did a cameo this morning at New Canaan Society, had these guys engrossed with thought and wisdom. So Jack and Jack have met each other. They know not to forget each other's names or to say hi to each other by each other's names. If they're getting on an airplane, you don't want to say, "Hi, Jack." So anyway, that was a Barsky joke.
I tell that joke as well, and I just downloaded
the
credit on Audible to get the book, and that will be the next one that I listen to in my journeys in the car. So thank you for that.
Oh yeah, it's really good. Yeah, because, and if somebody wants to listen to his story, we have 2 episodes on the Anything But Typical podcast. The last 2 drops. So episode 150 and episode 151.
Very, very, very well done. And I know what I'm talking about. I've been on over 100 podcasts. Some of them, the top ones, I'm missing Joe Rogan. And the lady, the blonde one, what's her name?
Brene Brown?
No. How can I forget her name? She used to be at Fox, and then she was at.
Oh, yeah. I know who you're talking about.
Megyn Kelly.
Megan.
The way she speaks with such clarity and such logic, it's astounding. It's like I think of a bubbling mountain brook, totally clear when I hear her talk. It's totally amazing.
Well, that beats a babbling brook.
I don't know if babbling is bubbling.
Yeah, we don't want that.
Clear, not contained with ego, not contained with ideology with some kind of a mission, just like
Yeah, an
clear
agenda.
logic. And she tells it like it is. I mean, she ran over Donald Trump in one of the interviews,
Oh, yeah.
and now she's a big Trump fan.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Well, before we get this party started, Jack, you usually have a lot of, I won't say useless trivia because it's useful trivia, but you kind of have your finger on the pulse of some like what's going on. Um, and with regard to business owners, et cetera. So any current events that you want to hit before we start asking questions? And then
Yeah.
actually, I want you guys to ask the questions because I know, and I'll bait the question if you guys don't. But you know,
I have plenty of
So,
questions. I'm a big fan. There was what was the movie with Clint Eastwood, Firefox, where he stole the brand new MiG out of Russia and
oh,
flew across the Arctic and landed on the ice and then had a submarine refuel and everything. So anyway, yes, I'm a big fan of the genre. But as far as current events, I will presume that most people know this already, but the Fed did cut interest rates yesterday,
yeah,
as sort of promised. There is anticipated maybe one more cut by the end of the year and then another cut into next year. And so it will have, likely the intended effect that we talked about previously on the show, in relation to borrowing, business owners being able to borrow more money and pursue initiatives that maybe they weren't going, you put on hold because of the cost of borrowing, the carrying costs, and also, homes being built, real estate transactions, both commercial and residential. So there's anticipation of that. And then, the stock markets kind of reacted as they would to that kind of news and as expected. So hopefully your 401ks and other investments have rebounded a little bit. And so, but there's more to come and we'll see. So that's really kind of the current, other than, the other things that are going on in the news with regard to people getting shot and how people are handling that on either side of the aisle, which we will not get into because there's no reason to. Ultimately, it is the taking of a life, no matter what, is wrong. So anyway,
yeah,
that's it.
yeah,
no matter how you think you justify this in some way, not directly but indirectly, which is it's condemnable. And to justify the taking of another life, we're not God, okay? And just one thing about high interest rates. People think rates are high now. When I bought my first home, the mortgage rate was 11%.
yes,
I had to buy down the mortgage and postpone some of the high payments down into the future. And then 2 years later, we moved. 3 years later, we moved, and the rates went down.
yeah, that's
But
right.
11%. I was out running. I lived in Queens, New York at the time. There was this one display from a bank that showed the rates, and every day I looked at the rates and like, oh my God, it went up again.
Yeah, there's
Uh,
definitely the demographic within this group of our audience that would know that. And actually, I was born in Queens, New York. I stayed there for just a little while, but yeah, that's sometimes my New York accent comes out when I talk to my people in New York that seem to be migrating to Florida, most of them of the older generation. So
yeah, Del Boca Vista. Does anybody know where Del Boca Vista was? If anybody does, Jack's going to give you a Starbucks gift card. You cannot Google it though. Del Boca Vista, very famous place, mentioned on a formerly famous, or it's still famous, but former TV show. Surprised by lack of market response to the cut. I think that was built in, Joe. That's just my gut. And then Joseph says, just let everybody know today's 50-cent cheeseburger day at McDonald's. So he knows where he's going to be getting lunch today. Good luck with that. Hopefully it's not bioengineered beef, but anyway, the French fries are always still tasty.
But there's another boogeyman that's still hanging out there, and that is the attempts to declare the tariffs illegal. That if the Supreme Court sides with the lower court, that would be extremely disruptive.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we've talked about that in a little bit here about, okay, what are the legal consequences of those things? And then also, are the money that they have been receiving, are they putting it into a savings account just in case they have to give it back? And so
Yeah.
likely not. And then also, Jack, so that the disruption to the business owners, and we have multiple examples of clients that are bringing goods in that are stuck at customs, and then they find out what they have to pay in that moment in order to get it through the gate. And the same exact goods in the same exact configuration, number, everything else costs differently from week to week to get it through that gate. And it's a surprise to the person with has the paycheck or the check to be able to give to customs. So yeah, a lot of disruption currently, and then also if it's reversed or not reversed, and who's suing and who does it apply to and everything else. So absolute chaos.
Yeah, a lot of crazy stuff going on. Just as another little kind of background for this audience that I think you guys will find interesting. So I'm not going to tell Jack's story, and he won't have time to tell his entire story on this thing, and that's not necessarily the point anyway. But yeah, so he was a spy recruited from KGB, Eastern Germany at the time. But he wasn't just a KGB spy. He had to assimilate in America, and as entrepreneurs do, figure it out, because he didn't have a playbook. And as good as the KGB was, some of their playbook was completely messed up. They did not understand Western culture, but he had to improvise a lot. And so I want you, as our audience, to be thinking about what are the questions that you have, especially as he tells some of his story. But he also rose through the ranks, came here illegally under false pretense and had to get legitimate, driver's license, social security card, and a passport.
Yep.
Which are not easy to do, but had to figure that out. But then also, once he did that, he had to get employment. And even though he was a chemist, valedictorian in 2 universities, including Baruch, right?
Baruch College, part of City University, but I graduated with quite a bit of distance to the number 2 as valedictorian in East Germany, with a master's degree in chemistry. So I was already, when the KGB recruited me, I was already an assistant professor and working on my doctorate. None of these credentials I could take with me, not even the knowledge that I
Right.
had in chemistry. Where did you get that from?
So he started in New York as a bike messenger.
Yeah, 3.5 years.
The best bike messenger, and actually made money.
And I tell you why I think I was the best, because one of my strengths is pattern recognition, and I quickly figured out how the lights change, particularly going across town. This is where you spend a lot of time just waiting for the light to change so you can go to the next block. But certain streets going east changed exactly the way I needed them to change, so I could keep on riding, and the other ways was going west. On top of it, I manipulated elevators. So there are some office buildings that had really slow elevators. Particularly the one that comes to mind, the Flatiron Building, was really old, the first skyscraper.
Yeah.
And it had this one elevator, like 25 floors or something like that. So if I had a delivery to maybe the 10th floor, and there was nobody else in in the elevator. I sent it up to the top floor, I pressed the down button and ran over there and had to get my signature, and bingo, when I got in front of the elevator, it opened automatically. So that's the manipulative aspect of espionage. I manipulated elevators.
But then he rose through the ranks to CIO
Yeah,
of some very big publicly traded companies.
yeah.
So, you know, so first question in from Papa Joe Farrell. His son Sean was at the CEO convergence yesterday.
Okay.
From a KGB perspective, did the Russians admire or despise Americans? That's a great question.
Secretly, KGB agents that I interacted with, they all had served as diplomats in the United States, and they proudly displayed the Western clothes that they had on them. And they clearly liked the United States, but only in private, right? We still, I mean, the reason that they actually had it so good was because they were a member of the KGB.
Yes.
So they were part of the elite. Have your cake and eat it too. The cake being, being convinced that you're doing something really good for the world, for everybody to, have live in harmony and wealth, and eating it meaning like getting to benefit from the fruits of capitalism. And that was one of the reasons I knew that would happen if you sign up. If I sign up, one of the reasons I signed up, it was like, you're serving a good cause, and you also get to live a good life.
Yeah. Interesting. Oh, good. I'm glad Sean liked the convergence. It was a special day, that's for sure, Joe.
Yeah, I met him.
Yeah. A lot of really great people. Just to plug, the reason that we do the podcast is because we want to highlight good people with good hearts that are entrepreneurs, that are trying to do good things, and that have humility, because they're very prevalent in a capitalistic society, but not everybody is aware of that. And so I think that's very important. But you guys get it because you are on here all the time, and that's what you guys do. So we appreciate that. Any other good questions for you guys before we unleash a little bit more? Okay, yeah, go, Jack.
All right. So this show is not meant to be political. We try to stay away from that. I think Adam he isn't political, but he expresses his beliefs on things, political beliefs on things.
The bear.
Yeah. So this question is more of interest. So with Putin going into Ukraine, what do you think is the motivation for doing that? And I think, I think about, okay, well, being part, this big conglomerate USSR, is it claiming back land that, feels belong to the motherland all along, and it's just a matter of just redirecting history to where it should be? Is it, because Ukraine is rich in minerals and everything else, and it is fruitful? So what would be, your thoughts on the reasons why, or the motivations for the aggressiveness of Russia at this point?
Whatever you just mentioned was playing a role, but you understand, Vladimir Putin is a flaming narcissist. I've followed him since he became a public figure, and when he was working for the mayor of St. Petersburg, he wasn't known. He was just one of the has-been KGB agents, and he is most likely the most masterful politician in the last 100 years, simply because he managed to survive in a country where the standard of living has not increased at all. and in some respects also has gone downhill. And he has the election results when he won the elections one after the next, they're primarily real. They didn't have to be manipulated.
Really?
Maybe a little bit. And look at right now. There are opinion surveys out there that were done by Western companies that showed that there's still support amongst the population. About 60% of the population support the war.
Wow.
That is Vladimir Putin is a master politician. He understands the Russian soul better than anybody in this country. Okay, so when I talk narcissism, you know, he wants he's building he's building his legacy. He wants to have a monument of Vladimir the Great right next to Peter the Great, who he admires a great deal. And so he does what it takes to support that goal of his. Now, with Ukraine is particularly special because, you know, when the Soviet Union was formed, Ukraine was incorporated and was forcibly incorporated by Lenin, because, you know, the two countries actually started out sort of as a unit, because Russia was formed as what's called the Rus in Kiev, and then they split up. That's why Ukrainian sounds very similar. When I hear what Ukrainians talk to each other, I think they're Russians. A very similar language, but you know, when it comes to the problem that Putin underestimated is that the hatred that the Ukrainian people, to the last person, have for Russia. And that's, I call this the national DNA. If you guys ever heard the word Holodomor?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so from the beginning of its existence, the communist Russia and then the Soviet Union was aggressively collectivizing farming. Okay, and some of the biggest farms in the entire Soviet Union were in Ukraine. That's the most fertile soil, the breadbasket of Europe, right?
Yeah.
And the Ukrainian farmers resisted collectivization, so Stalin moved in the military and the KGB and forcibly forced collectivization by confiscating all the grain. And there were over 1 million people died from hunger. It was so incredibly gut-wrenching in that there are documented situations when parents ate their children who died from hunger.
Wow.
Yes. So now, you know how deeply that is embedded in what I call the national DNA, the hatred of everything Russian, even though at a point it becomes irrational, but you know, these feelings, they're so deeply ingrained. It's the same way, like that I still have friends in East Germany who are still communists, even though there's plenty of proof that that doesn't make any sense anymore. But to see what you learn early in your time on Earth, it's very, very difficult to overcome. And so that is why now there's every man, woman, and child in Ukraine is ready and willing to sacrifice and fight the Russians. So now one more thing that is very important, that what the Ukrainian government made a big mistake. Because Vladimir Putin, one of the reasons that he gives, talk about the Russian DNA, like the history of Russia. When Russia was formed, right from the beginning, it became slightly aggressive and invaded neighboring countries, but also was invaded. So there was constantly this sort of the state of impending war or ongoing war, and they were invaded from the north by the Vikings, from the east by the Mongols, from the south by the Turks, and of course from the west by first Napoleon and then Hitler. So there's this mentality that we are in danger of being invaded again, and the whole idea of bringing Ukraine into NATO, that is giving Putin ammunition. But the number one, the most powerful ammunition that he got was delivered to him by the Ukrainian government. Just prior in the period before World War II, there was a Nazi movement that was formed in Ukraine, nationalist, sort of along the lines the way that happened in Germany. And when the German army came into Ukraine, those Nazis joined the Germans in going to the east, or becoming wardens of concentration camps and killing, participated in the killing. And the leader of that nasty Nazi-like group was a fellow named Stepan Bandera. And it was, I forgot exactly the year, 5, 6, 7 years ago. It was the 100th anniversary of Mr. Bandera's birth. And the then Ukrainian government, it wasn't Zelensky, but it nevertheless was the Ukrainian government, issued commemorative stamps to honor that Nazi. So as Vladimir Putin says, we see there's proof there's Nazis. Even though they're not as many as they used to be, but the government is infiltrated by the Nazis. I mean, insane, the stupidity that comes out of certain governments. Like, I hate government. I can't stand it.
Yeah.
Our own government has been pretty stupid as well.
Yeah. Yeah. It knows no boundaries.
Yeah.
And you said it's interesting, narcissism drives a lot of it in power, right? And I think that's another reason why I like private business so much, because yes, I've worked for some narcissists too, but they don't see longevity of success. It just doesn't work for over the long haul. You can get capitulation out of your ranks for a while, but not heartstrings.
There's a term, it's called political narcissist. The raw narcissists, they just have this attitude of like that they deserve whatever they desire right now. Political narcissists know how to wait and play the game until they get it. And Vladimir Putin is one of them. And Zelensky is one of them.
Yeah.
And our president is, in my view, one of them as well. Now, he's not building on his monument. He's not building his monument. He wants the Nobel Peace Prize, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He wants to go into history as somebody who brought peace. That's not a bad thing.
Right.
But he's driven by this, what he has inside of him.
Mm-hmm.
If it works out, good for him and good for us and the world.
Talk a little bit about the shift, because you were extremely indoctrinated.
Yeah.
And bought hook, line, and sinker into this collective good and thought it was a noble thing that you were doing.
Right.
You could justify the deception, ends justifies the means for the greater good, etc. Talk about some of the shift that started happening, where you started seeing chinks in the armor, or like, hey, wait a minute, you had these questions about
what
you were seeing.
Well, first of all, it wasn't very hard to convince us that particularly colonialism and imperialism was at the root cause of extreme poverty in such countries like India, what the Brits did with India and Pakistan, and Africa. So that was the truth. But when it comes to the evil of capitalism as an economic system, we had to rationalize because we knew that the stand, because when Germany was divided into the capitalist West Germany and communist East Germany, and the capitalist part of Germany was significantly more wealthy than the rest of us. We knew there was standard of living was much higher over there. So we had to rationalize, and the rationalization was this one word, imperialism. The Western countries bled third world countries and stole the wealth from their minerals, bananas.
Yeah, right.
And we didn't know any better. We believed it. So I knew what to expect. First of all, my first dive into the West was when the KGB had me go into West Berlin and just wander around and see what you can see from the street, from in the display windows, and the richness there, just to get me used to this, so I don't get shocked by the time I get deployed. A couple of times I went, and the beer tasted better. The street vendors had food that was really good compared to what we had in the East. Again, rationalized. Then I spent 3 months on a practice trip in Canada, and there I really it was a good idea that I was on that practice trip, because the shock, and I spent a lot of time in Montreal, the shock that I experienced there was a good thing that it was over with, so I wouldn't be shocked by New York City. So and go like, ugh. I spent a lot of time in a big department store and looked at everything they had, and I still remember the beautiful Oriental carpets, because I had an apartment myself, and it was the floor was bare wood, so all I could find is some paint to paint it red. And these carpets, the carpets that I could have bought in East Germany were either beige or gray. Okay. Every color, every pattern, and the clothes that I was able to buy some clothes, and I had to. Eventually, when I was deployed, I had to wear Western clothes and couldn't go run around in the miserable, the substandard Eastern clothes. So, but all of that, I still rationalized away. Here's what happened though. When I was a bike messenger, I still didn't have enough evidence to understand that there's something very good about the capitalist economic structure. But when I was at my first job as a computer programmer, I realized that the competition, the individual competition, played a big role in making companies more productive. Because in East Germany, there was no individual competition. If there was competition, it was group by group by group. Groups would get bonuses if they did good, but only as a group. Okay, and so individualism was downplayed significantly, even though the best students were rewarded with a higher scholarship, and I got a real big one. But because there was some that wasn't industry, it was academia, that was learning. We spent in high school, the system they started an experiment for the future leaders. High school was we only the top 20% of middle school students were allowed to go on to high school. So in other words, high school students would eventually become part of the ruling class, at least quite a few of us. And they wanted to make sure that we stayed close to the working class, right? And so our school year, the month was 3 weeks of regular schooling and 1 week out there at a factory learning a trade. Some people became electricians. I became sort of a I don't even know what it was called, but we worked in I worked in a place like similar to an oil refinery, where a lot of this stuff was automated, and they took lignite coal and gasified it and that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah.
And we were exposed to utter laziness. Everybody didn't work. Everybody just hung out and waited for an alarm to ring. And us students, eventually we got the message, and we left the facility and hung out in the woods and smoked cigarettes. So it was incredibly inefficient. And why did all these people get paid? So, and that I didn't find in the capitalist structure. You had to perform. Now, with some minor differences, and occasionally there's people who didn't do anything and made money anyway. That always happens in companies. Not so much.
Sure.
Not so much in leanly run startups,
right,
run by entrepreneurs. So that what I got to a point where I recognized that the relative poverty of East Germany was caused by central planning and not having some competition. Mm-hmm. So, and I bought into a ideology that was introduced by Western European socialist parties called convergence theory. So they had this idea to merge the good parts of communism, taking care of the people, and whatever else was considered good, with the good parts of capitalism. Well, fundamentally, what that becomes, and that term wasn't used at the time, it's a welfare state. Mm-hmm. We have this in Western Europe. They're all welfare states. Mm-hmm. They don't function too well either. Look at what's happening in the UK. Mm-hmm. What's happening in the German economy. There's too much government taking over for the welfare of the people, and that's ineffective, because what government just sucks resources out of the private industry and redistributes it. But the government people have to be paid, right? So it reduces the pot that is available. But the convergence theory, I bought into this, and interestingly enough, this was in the late 80s. I remember my last trip back to Moscow, when every 2 years I was back in Moscow for some retraining. For instance, some ciphers that I used to encrypt and decrypt, I had to relearn new algorithms and stuff like that, and some rest and relaxation and more planning. In 1988, I'm stepping off the plane. I go outside, and I'm picked up by one of those useless jack of all trades. This guy he wasn't very bright, but he did errands for the other KGB agents. And we are in the vehicle, and he volunteers. He talks about, the convergence theory this is like something that's gonna happen. The guy didn't have an opinion unless his bosses had an opinion. So there were elements under Gorbachev in the KGB who were veering towards socialism, recognizing that the old system, the central planning, doesn't work. And oh, by the way, central planning, East Germany, you could figure it out, was, I think, in terms of number of people, had fewer people than New York City. And that should be an entity that's relatively easy to plan for as opposed to the Soviet Union, right? Well, the Planning Commission, I have a friend who worked for the Planning Commission, and when we met again several years after the wall came down, when I was able to go back to East Germany, what used to be East Germany, we met, and she told me she was employed by the Planning Commission, and they were lying to themselves. Okay, there was 2 sets of books, and what this is the beginning of a collapse, and I think we have some of that going on right now in the way American cities are run. They're lying to themselves as well, because you can't fail, and also you want to protect your job. Okay, and protecting a job, you must succeed. And there's just too many truly non-working individuals now involved in our economy. So I'm going a little bit.
Well, no, I think it's interesting, these observations coming from your vantage point that's unique to the rest of us.
Yeah.
But I think that's why we're curious and what we're interested in. And so cracks are starting to form in that ideology, at least in what you're experiencing.
Yeah.
And then,
oh, you want me to finish it up?
Yeah, I want to bring you back to that, but I'm okay with that.
Well, so I was still, even the convergence theory, I was still a patriotic East German citizen. I still thought that convergence theories, the welfare state, it made a lot of sense to me. Intellectually, I was not yet fully on the other side. And then one day I'm sitting in my apartment and I have the TV on, and there's the live transmission of how the wall was brought down. That was a big surprise.
Yeah.
It was a big surprise for everybody, the KGB, the CIA, the FBI, and of course, little old me. And curious as I am, immediately, and at that time, you could do research without having to go to the library. But, I did the library, and then I started poking around on the internet. And what I found was all the lies that we are being fed by, for instance, being able to read Marx, Engels, and particularly Lenin, unredacted.
Oh.
And I found out that Lenin, who was my biggest hero because he sacrificed his life, his health and his life for the good of the Russian people, and eventually he formed the Soviet Union. He was my God, and I started reading unredacted Lenin, where he talked about, he gave instructions to go and kill some wealthy farmers because we need to make a strong statement that owning property is not just not good for you economically, it's also not good for your health or you in your life. And he was very explicit about this.
Wow.
And so now I changed my attitude altogether, and I became rather quickly anti-communist. And since I wanted to have a good life, and I had a family now in the United States, I wanted to build, my version of the American dream. I went into the competition, and I wanted to make more money, and I took initiatives, and I excelled, and I got promotions, and I was very happy in the capitalist system, even though when I became a manager and even an executive, the ability to be an individual performer and competing as an individual was more and more reduced. There was the specter of the collective coming back, and the central management, the hierarchy, and the inefficiencies that come with the hierarchy. So I managed to do very well and get paid very well, but working was no fun because there was too much politics involved, and too much lack of reason from the top. And so I meant I did well because of an ability that also made me somewhat successful as an illegal undercover agent, fearlessness and curiosity and restlessness, and just anyway. I managed crises. I was hired by several companies to fix something and manage a crisis. I actually saved the United Healthcare infrastructure team from falling apart.
Really?
Yeah, I did. I was hired by a senior executive over there. And you come. I lived in Pennsylvania. You come to Minneapolis and fix this group. I don't know any of the technology. No, I know you can. See, he understood that I had the courage and the people skills, and I had the background. I love these people that do infrastructure work because you can't lie to the computer. And I knew them. I spoke their language. They were falling apart literally. One after the other was of the senior people. They were recruited away to other companies, and in those days, Minneapolis was leading in technology adaptation. They used Linux, Unix, and like Oracle, when the rest of the world or corporate world used IBM mainframe. So anyway, and then when the crisis was over and I was able to leave Minneapolis, I installed a new manager. Now I was reintegrated into the corporate structure, and that didn't feel good. And eventually I wound up at Prudential. That didn't feel good at all. It was horrible, that Prudential culture. Inefficient, being lied to from the very top, these missions and vision statements that nobody believes in, a lot of cynicism, and you don't want to go to work because there's ugliness involved in operating in such a culture. So I actually managed to get a severance when I left, because I got a new boss and she was mean and evil, and she literally.
Yeah. I think we've all had some of those.
No,
especially if you've been in corporate America.
She targeted me because she knew that I was independent minded, and she wanted to have her ass kissing folks following her. She targeted me. She set me up, and at one point she threatened me. So, if you don't do what I tell you to do, you're done. Like, with a sweet smile in the office, she called me into the office and she said, "Hey, Jack, I'm a baseball fan. And in baseball, 3 strikes, you're out.
Oh, gee.
You, sir, have 2 strikes on you." Okay. I managed to, at this point, I knew it was over.
Yeah.
So I went to HR and I told them that, I had a phenomenal track record as far as having managed the project to replace HR benefits and payroll, $100 million project. and it was very successful. So I I was a bit of a potential lawsuit coming, so uh, they let me go with a severance.
I gotta interject here real quick, Jack. So I didn't ever think of, now I had some good experiences and bad experiences in Fortune 500 companies. And it all still comes down to leadership, but the correlation between what you were abhorring from central planning
Yeah,
re-emerging in corporate hierarchies. I mean, you really don't have the ability in a smaller company, privately held company, for those kind of layers.
no, you don't.
So that's why you don't see a lot of the bloat. Now, we all saw during COVID, we may have had some bloat that does kind of come through, but man, when it's survival, like you cut it down to the bone to just make sure that the entity and people's livelihoods survive, right? But that is not necessary. It's numbed a little bit in 120,000, 200,000 person companies, or even 40,000 when my first Fortune 500. So I think that's very interesting. So just a note. But I guess the next question that I've got is, as you've where were you going back into the spy world? So you were still undercover.
Yeah.
Had you talk about how things, did you go to the FBI? Did they come knocking on your door?
No.
Like what happened? So you'd already created the cover story to leave the KGB before the wall fell. So he faked having HIV AIDS in the late 80s when
that was when they called me back as part of a perceived emergency. I got communication that they were quite certain that the FBI was about to arrest me, and so that was the emergency protocol was just make a beeline to the Canadian border and go to the Soviet embassy in Ottawa, and they would take me home. And as I shared with you already, at the time I had an 18-month-old daughter in the United States. And that was the first time that I wasn't in love with a woman. It was the first time I wasn't in love with the communist cause. It was the first time that I wasn't in love with my own self. I experienced unconditional love for this little girl who at the time couldn't talk yet. Her development was retarded because she was born with a hearing impairment. So all she could at that time was just smile at me and just with a big brown eyes, and she was incredibly beautiful. And I did not know a way to take care of this child and her mother. So this child would not grow up in poverty. The mother had 4 years of schooling. She was born and raised in Guyana and came to the United States as an illegal. And, I married her and to make her legal and blah, blah, blah. So, and the decision, I had to make a decision here. That here was a threat that the FBI was going to arrest me and I would wind up in jail. So, if I'm in jail, I'm no good for this child and her mother. And there was no way for me to remotely take care of them. If I asked the KGB to help me out, they would have put me in jail for insubordination, right? I wasn't supposed to make an illegal legal, right? And then have a child, and fundamentally everything that was good for me was if I returned. They had promised me a house because I was towards the end of my the 10 to 12 years that they put in front of me, that at which point my service as an illegal would have to end. I also had dollar savings in the Soviet Union, and I had received 2 years before that emergency thing popped up. I had received the second highest decoration of the Soviet Union. Just to add a little bit of the irony, which is attached to what we talked about initially about the attitude of the KGB folks towards the United States.
Yes, yeah.
I received a monetary award with that, the Soviet medal of $10,000. So the irony is that here is the Soviet state giving me the second highest decoration and rewarding me in the currency of the country that I was supposed to help destroy.
Wow.
The blindness, I mean, but they all knew that, 100,000 rubles would have been worth less than $10,000. So anyway,
Yeah, interesting.
so everything that was good for me was back there, and everything there was a dual threat: A, that the FBI could arrest me, and B, that if I refused to leave this child and tell him that I'm not returning home, they could easily have interpreted this as the KGB as defection. And I knew that they did not deal very nicely with defectors. So I had to make a decision. I was forced to make a decision, and they pushed really hard. At one point, actually, they sent a KGB agent to talk to me and to try to figure out why I wasn't responding to signals and radio transmissions. And they sent somebody to see if I'm actually still alive, or that I'm still operational. Where he found me waiting for a train to take the A train, the subway to work, and he knew what I looked like. He came up to me from the right. It was still dark outside. It was in late November, and he whispered into my ears, "You got to go home, or else you're dead." Okay, I mean, I had to take this somewhat seriously, but I chose not to. I thought because he had a strong Russian accent, and most likely he didn't want to say, "You're dead." He wanted to say, "You're busted," or something like that, right? But he didn't have the vocabulary. Nevertheless, you had to take this seriously. So now they knew that I knew that they know. Now I had to make that decision. I could not play for time anymore. And that is when, and I shared this with you, that in a spontaneous moment, this was at the end of a failed dead drop operation. A dead drop operation means when you you receive some stuff that is not information. Like in this case, it was passport and money. That I was supposed to find this in an oil can someplace in a park, and crushed old oil can, and there was no oil can. And now what? I walk out of that park, and at the moment I leave the park, I have these three words pop into my head: I'm staying. That was, from a rational point of view, rational analysis point of view, that was the dumbest decision I have ever made. And yet it worked out perfectly well. I don't know if the audience, mostly Christians.
We've got a whole variety.
Christians.
We have a whole variety.
I just got to tell you, eventually I moved from atheism and communism to capitalism, and I'm a Christian now. And I truly believe that this thought was planted in me by the Holy Spirit. there's no other explanation why I at that point made that decision. Worked out. I told the KGB that thank you very much. In my last letter in secret writing, I appreciate that you're trying to take care of me, but I really can't come home because I have contracted HIV/AIDS. And there's only one country where I might actually get treatment. They bought it. Hook, line, and sinker, because they only knew about my situation, what I told them, because they did not check on me. They did not check on the veracity of what I told them, because that would have endangered me, because all the agents that could have checked on me were followed by the FBI. So that's why I know when I graduated as valedictorian from City University, they didn't know that either, because they just stayed away from me. They had to.
That wouldn't have qualified as being undercover. He delivered his speech at Madison Square Garden in front of 4,000 people. Hey, I know, Jack, like there are volumes.
Yeah.
Get this book. Unashamedly, I'm pushing it. There's nothing in it for me. But there's a whole lot in it for you.
Well, you already bought the book, so you don't even get a free copy.
No. Yeah, I bought it twice because I also bought it on Audible. But anyway, Jack, thank you for being here. Thank you for flying all the way out here.
And thank you for hosting me so graciously and giving me an opportunity to share my story 3 times.
Yes, 3 times
in 2 days.
Well, actually, 4 times if you include the podcast. But because that's right. So today, twice, yesterday at the CEO Convergence. But we'll be back next week, Lord willing, for 273rd. And Joe Farrell does say, you've clearly defined why people become entrepreneurs, when we were talking about the corporate hierarchy and that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You could not pay me to go back into the belly of the beast. I love what I do and who I serve.
Same here, even though it's sometimes very frustrating and you have so many dependencies that I didn't have as much, and for instance, when a partner of yours or somebody you're playing with disappears, there's nobody waiting in the wings. So in the corporation, there's usually somebody else who
That's right.
will step
Just
in.
slot them in.
Yeah.
No, you have to scramble a lot more.
But
like when in your early days of figuring it out and coming into America, I mean, a lot of scrambling.
But a lot less dishonesty, a lot less politics. In corporate America, almost everybody comes in with a mask on. And I mentioned that yesterday. There are not too many masked people in the corporate world. They will be unmasked rather in the entrepreneurial world. They will be unmasked rather quickly and isolated. So, and I honestly, here's one phrase I want to share with you. I banned the "Thank God It's Friday" from my vocabulary. Because I like what I'm doing.
So I banned it too. I say I'm totally grateful it's Friday, FREYDAY. Jack, thank you for being on here. Everybody, thanks for hanging on late. We will put this up on the BGW CPA YouTube, on the BGW channel. So I can't say CPA anymore. But Jack Santinello has the Shoemaker YouTube channel as well. So this will be posted up later on. Lord willing, we'll see you next week, and stay tuned for what that one's going to be about. But thank you again, Jack. And thank you, Jack. Just fascinating. Your story is just fascinating.
Yeah,
you guys
absolutely.
Have a great rest
Thank
of the
you.
Day.
Thank you, Jack. It's been an absolute pleasure. I mean, I know we could spend so much more time talking about.
Heck
So thank you
we
for
may have to,
spending time with us.
We'll have to bring him back in on a Zoom and go into a topic and do some more of that, because just that perspective difference is so valuable, I think.
Can I throw a teaser out there? So one of the
Yeah.
questions I would ask and the next time, so you can prepare for it, is you mentioned, and I visualize a vertical of elements of capitalism and an elements a bucket of socialism, and you mentioned this
Yeah.
convergence. And so what elements of socialism have been adopted by capitalism? What works, what doesn't work? And I'm thinking of things like, okay, 401ks, and I'm talking about within the confines of a business. And is that kind of a socialistic type of thing, or is that just a compensation kind of thing, an alternative form of compensation?
Well,
You mentioned the word culture, and you mentioned it once. I was listening for it. And so we talk a lot about culture, but we can save it for another time. That's kind of a teaser to put out there.
okay.
Teaser. All right, we'll bring Jack Barsky back if he'll be gracious to join us via Zoom in Austin or whatever. And you're always welcome to come and see us in Charlotte. So
Yeah, and I have a lady friend who would want to come back.
okay. All right.
Fantastic.
Well, stay tuned.
Thank you, guys. Have a good day.
Nice talking.
Bye-bye.
Ooh. Tour de force.
Good.
I have my own opinion, and